Hello and welcome to MLS Fantasy Week 2 tier list. I'm Jake and this is MLS Fantasy Analyst. Welcome to Week 2. Week 1 is in the books and it told us a lot about how fantasy is going to work this year. So I came up with this little data table right here just to see where the money went, where the points went per position. So 8+ points. That is how many players in each position got 8 or more points. So goalies 9, defenders 17. So defenders got the most, forwards got the least. And then the top 10 average, that is the top 10 goalies. What was the average of their averages across week 1? And as you can see, goalies had the lowest average, forwards had the highest average, mids, defenders. It is important to note that there is a bit of a week 1 bias in this data. So forwards aren't going to be scoring goals every week, and defenders aren't going to be averaging clean sheets every week. So all of these numbers are likely inflated slightly. But in general, if last season and previous seasons is anything to go by, mids tend to be able to keep their averages higher, where forwards and defenders will drop off a little bit more. Now, how I interpret this, and you may interpret it a little bit differently, is that forwards are high risk, high reward, mids are medium risk, medium reward, and defenders are lower risk, lower reward, and goalies are medium risk, low reward. So, in general, if you pick the right forward, then you're going to get a lot of points, but it's harder to pick the right forward because less of them get that many points. Whereas defenders, it's a lower average, but more of them get that. So I think in general, attacking mids are going to be, again, just as in years past, are going to again be the main point getters, and forwards are going to be the more variable ones where they could get, like Benteke, get 22 points in a week, or they might get 2 points in a week, depending on if they score goals or not. I think it's important to go over some of the point system differences that are different between what we thought they would be preseason to what they actually are from week 1. Aerial duels are no longer going to count, and neither are blocked shots. Key passes are a little bit different than last year. We're getting a lot more key passes this year. I don't know how they've changed that, but for some reason we're getting a lot more key passes this year. And also, if a player gets subbed off, a defender or a midfielder gets subbed off after 60 minutes and they have a clean sheet, usually in past years, even if the opposing team went and scored afterward, that player would still keep the clean sheet bonus, but it appears like this year that isn't going to be the case. It appears that the team has to keep the clean sheet for the rest of the game, even if the player has already subbed off. Look at Pablo Ruiz, who played 63 minutes and then kept the clean sheet, but then St. Louis in the 79th minute went and scored, and Pablo Ruiz did not get that clean sheet bonus. It seems to be that defensive midfielders and center backs aren't going to get as many points this year, mainly because of those point bonuses that have been taken away. Defenders, especially center backs, are going to be clean sheet hunting a lot more, besides just getting those extra bonus points that last year they might have gotten. I think there's going to be a little bit less than those. I think wingbacks like Lennon and Alba and Wagner are going to do a little bit better because they've still got crosses and key passes and all that. So I think they're going to keep up a little bit better. But I think center backs and especially defensive midfielders are really going to struggle a little bit more in this year's game. It also seems to be that forwards are going to be a little bit more consistent than in years past. Just with the new key passes stat, it seems like forwards are getting more extra bonus points than they maybe would have in previous years. So forwards might be a little bit more viable this year, might be a little bit more consistent. But as always, forwards are still going to have to rely on those goals and assists to get the main bulk of their points, just like defenders rely on clean sheets to get the main bulk of their points. All right, let's get to the tier list. This week, the points are going to be based not only on points, how many points the player is likely to get, but also the value increase that a player is likely to get. Now, value increases not only from points that will happen this week, but also points that happened last week. So if a player had a really good week last week, even if they have a mediocre week this week, they're still likely to go up in price. And same thing goes for the other way around. If they had a bad week last week and they cost a lot of money, they're likely to still continue going down even if they have a decent week this week. So keep that in mind as you make your picks. Players who did really well last week, your value is going to likely shoot up, and that salary cap is really important to get up in those early weeks of the season. Also keep in mind that there are a handful of teams playing midweek in the CONCACAF Champions Cup: Orlando, Philadelphia, Houston, St. Louis, Cincinnati, Nashville, and New England. So keep those in mind. They might rotate players, so just make sure to watch starting lineups and keep that in mind when you make your picks. Also, Atlanta has a bye this week. Everyone else has a single game week. Atlanta has plenty of scrubs, 4-mil scrubs playing on the field. They don't have a 4-mil keeper. All right, let's start with the picks. Let's start with goalies. We're going to start with Calendar, who is going to go into B tier. Now, Calendar has done well the last couple weeks. He has a pretty high average. He's playing at home against Orlando. Orlando got shut out last week, but it's a rivalry game, and those are pretty hard to predict. So that's why I'm putting him in B tier this week. Next is Pais, however you say his name. He is going to go into A tier. I think he's got one of the best shutout chances this week. He's playing at home. Next is Clark. Clark is going to go into B tier. He's going to go there because I think he has a decent shutout chance, but he did lose a little bit of value last week, and so take your chances of whether he's going to go up in value or not, but I think he has a good shutout chance at home this week. Next is Thomas from Seattle. Now, Stephen Fry might still be out next week. I'm going to put Thomas in A tier just because he's such a cheap option. He's a good person to throw on the bench. He's only 4.9 mil. Even though he only got 2 points last game, he's playing at home this week. Got a decent shutout chance, but I think he's going to be a good pick. Next is Ravas from New England. He's going to go into B tier because he's got a good shutout chance this week against Toronto at home in New England. Last week he only got 1 point, so he got lower in value. That's why he's only in B tier, because he might go down in value still even if he has a good game. But especially if he has a bad game, he's definitely going to still go down in value. But I still think that it's a pretty decent pick. I think that they've got a good chance of a shutout. Now, Bono got 3 points last week, but he's playing Portland at Portland. And honestly, they both had such offensive weeks that I think it's going to be a shootout. And now that I say that, it's going to be a 0-0 game. But I am putting Bono in F tier. I think he would not be a very good pick this week. And last but not least, we have Pantemis from Portland. For similar reasons to Bono, I think, like I said, it's going to be a shootout, I think, between Portland and DC. It's in Portland, so I'll give Pantemis a little bit better chance, although Crapo might be back next week. We'll see. So in that case, Pantemis wouldn't be playing, so check your lineups there. Now we have no S-tier goalies, but let's move on to the defenders. We've got Malanda and Privet. I'm going to put them in the same category. I'm going to put them both in A. They both got tons of points last week, but they are away at Vancouver this week. Vancouver didn't play last week, so it's kind of hard to tell how well they're going to do. They also are missing their coach. But Malanda and Privet, I'm putting them in A just because they are definitely going to go up in value. Next, we have our first entry in S tier. We have Jordi Alba. Jordi Alba has been averaging 7 points over the last 2 games. And they're playing Orlando in Miami, so it's a rivalry game. I think there's going to be fireworks. I think Alba's going to have a good game. Now, Aviles and Christoph. I'm putting them both in B tier. They both are averaging about 6 points per game, which is pretty good for a defender. They're playing at home against Orlando, but like I said, I think there's going to be goals in that game, so I wouldn't bet on a shutout for Miami, although it's definitely a possibility. Next, we have Gressel. I'm putting Gressel in C tier because I think he's too much money for his 4.5 average, but Gressel he just might have himself a game at any time. So he's a little bit hard to judge right now with the new point system. I'm not sure if he's going to be getting a ton of points like he did last year, but I'm putting him in C tier right now just because he's too much money for that 4.5 average that he's on. Now we've got Tafari from Dallas. Tafari got 5 points last game without a shutout, so getting 3 bonus points is always a good sign for defender, and he's playing at home this week. I think that Dallas have a decent chance for a shutout, so that's why I'm putting him in S tier this week. Next, we have Mikael Dos Santos. from Houston. Mikael got 103 passes, completed passes last week, which is almost 3 bonus points for passes, which is incredible. He got 5 points total last week without the shutout, and I think they've got a decent shutout chance at home this week as well. So that's why I'm putting Mikael in S tier. McGraw, I am putting in B tier. He got 5 points last game with a slight price rise, which is good. But like I said before, I think there's going to be a goal fest in Portland. So I am putting him in B tier because he's got those extra bonus points that he's been getting, but he might get some negative points for goals scored against. Jackson Reagan. I'm putting Reagan in S tier. Now, Reagan only got 4 points last game. He had a slight value rise, but he averaged 6.22 points on average per game last year. And I think Seattle's at home, so I think that they're going to have a decent chance at a shutout. Keller from Cincinnati, I am putting in C tier. Miazga will likely be back because he's done with his suspension, so I think Keller is going to be the one that gets knocked off from that. So I just don't think he's going to start. So check lineups, but Keller's probably, even though he had a good week last week, if he plays at all, he'll go up in price. But I just don't think he's going to play very much because of Miazga. Now some rapid fire ones. We've got Murphy, Campbell, Nealis, ELA, not to be confused with Elie, and McNaughton. They are all away. They all had good weeks last week and are likely to have a price rise. So I'm going to put them all in B tier. And last but not least of defenders, we have Walker Zimmerman. I'm putting Zimmerman in F tier. Zimmerman only got 1 point last week as he came off the bench, and he's likely to go down even more in value unless he can manage a shutout in Colorado, which I just don't think is very likely to happen. It's not impossible, but that's why I'm putting Zimmerman in F tier. He is too expensive for a player that might not play or might only get subbed on. 2 midfielders. Let's start off with Herbers. I think Herbers is a must pick this week. He goes into S tier. He's definitely going to go up in price. He had a great week last week, got I think 11 points, and he's playing at home. So I think he is a must pick this week. Herber's teammate Gutierrez, I'm putting in A tier. He is pretty much the same credentials as Herbers this week. Playing at home, got 11 points last game. He's just a little bit more expensive. So I still think he's a great pick. You could pick both of them, but if you're only going to pick one of them, pick the cheaper one with Herbers. Next, we have Carlos Heel. I think Heel is going to be a popular captain pick this week. I'm putting him in S tier. He got 10 points last week, and last year at home, he averaged 8.88 points per game, and he's playing at home this week. So I think he is going to have a great week, and like I said, I think he's going to be a pretty popular captain pick this week. Next is Bogusz. He got 10 points last week, so he's likely going to get another price rise, but I'm putting him in A tier because he's away. He's at RSL, and honestly, who knows with RSL? They could get a shutout. They could get scored on 4 times. It's just hard to tell. As an RSL fan, it's hard to tell. Illaramendi averaged about 5.5 points at home last year. He's playing at home today. I mean, not today, this week. And I'm putting him in A tier. He got 10 points last week. So I think he's going to be a pretty good pick. Williamson got 10 points last week. He is at home this week, and he's a slightly cheaper option than some of these other midfielders. So for that reason, I am putting him as an S tier pick this week. Harris for Colorado. He got 8 points last week, and he's very, very cheap, but I'm putting him B tier because this week he is very unlikely to get very many points, but he's still likely to go up in value. So if you're going for value picks, I think he's a good pick, maybe a good one to put on your bench. Lewin got 7 points last game. He last year averaged 8.93 points at home. For that reason, I'm putting him in A tier because he is home this week against NYCFC. Sullivan has a mid-game week this week in CONCACAF, but got 7 points last week. I'm putting him in a solid B tier. He got an assist last week, so that was a decent amount of his bonus points. But I think that he is a fairly solid week. He's fairly cheap, so I think he's likely to go up in price. So I think he's a pretty solid pick this week. De La Vega for Seattle. He got 6 points last week with a goal. He did not start. I'm going to put him in B tier. If he starts, definitely be checking lineups for that. I think he can do very well if he starts, but if he doesn't start, probably not a good pick to go with. Diego Gomez, one of the favorites from last week, is another favorite this week. I'm putting him in A tier. He's playing at home. He averaged 5.5 points per game over the last 2 games. He's playing at home, like I said, and he is still fairly cheap. He's still going to go up in value, so he's a good value pick. Busquets, I'm going to put in C tier. I just think he's too expensive for his 3.5 point average. And defensive midfielders have just really been nerfed this year, and so I think he's feeling the effects of that. It's always possible he can get an assist, get some key passes in there, but I think they're better midfielders to pick on Miami. Taylor, I think, is a good pick. He's kind of in the same boat as Gomez, got 5.5 points on average over the last 2 games, but I'm putting him in B tier just because he's a little more expensive than Gomez, but I still think he's a pretty good pick. All right, now Kowalczyk, or however you say his name, on Houston. He's a very good value pick. I'm putting him in A tier. He got 5 points last game, I believe. Let me double check that. Yeah, 5 points last game, and will definitely rise in price. He's playing at home this week, so I think he's a very, very good value pick this week. Facundo Torres. He only got 3 points last week, playing away at Miami, but there might be fireworks, but I still think he's just too expensive for the output that he's so far given. So I'm putting him in C tier this week. Mihailovic is going to be the first midfielder to go into F tier. He only got 1 point last week, lost a lot of value, and I think he's going to continue to lose value. He could have a decent game against Nashville. He's at home, but Nashville has a pretty good defense, so I don't think it's a very good pick this week. I think there's definitely other midfielders in that price range that are much better picks. Gald had a bye last week, so he's a little untested, but he averaged 7.5 points a game at home last year, so I'm going to put him in A tier. Vancouver is missing their coach for a month or two, on suspension, so it's going to be interesting to see how they play. It's a little up in the air, but Gald is always a good pick. Now the last of the midfielders, I'm grouping the RSL midfielders all together, and I'm putting them collectively in F tier. That is Luna, Ruiz, and Carlos Gomez. I think that they all are too expensive for their poor averages. They're all kind of stealing points away from each other, and until one of them steps up and decides to be the main playmaker, it's going to be hard to decide which RSL midfielder to go for. All right, I've shifted everything over so we can see the forwards. We're going to start with Benteke. He's going to go into A tier. He's borderline S tier. He had a very good game last week, best of any player in MLS. He got a hat trick, and he's going to be away. That's the only reason he's not in S. He's away, but they're at Portland, and I think that one's going to be a shootout, so I think Benteke is most likely going to be a good pick this week. Now, Anthony, for similar reasons of Benteke, is going to go into S tier only because he's at home. He got 12 points last week. I think he's going to have another good week this week, and since he's at home, I think that's the only reason I put him over Benteke this week. Now, Messi. I learned my lesson last week. I should have captained him, but Messi's going into S tier. Messi's averaging 10 points a game over 2 games. He's playing at home versus a rival. I think Messi's going to have a good week. Even though he's really expensive, I think he's definitely an S tier pick. Now, Bouanga and Jovic are both away this week. Both got 10 points last week, and so I'm putting both of them in A tier. Now, Sealy got 10 points last week, is very cheap, and for that reason, he's an S tier pick. I think that a lot of people are going to be picking him this week, and for good reason. He's really cheap. He's definitely going to go up in price as long as he plays. Cucho is away this week at Minnesota. He got 9 points last game, and last year he averaged 7 points a game away. Yeah, more than 7 points a game away. So I think he's still going to be a good pick this week, even viable, even when he's away. Kikanovic, if that's how you say it, got 9 points away last week, and is at home this week against a rival, LA Galaxy. So I think he's a pretty good pick this week again, and he's a little bit of a cheaper option. He's not the most expensive forward out there. Arango has averaged 7.5 points a game so far this season over 2 games. So I'm putting him in A tier because they are home against LAFC, and there's every indication that he'll continue to have a good season. Adinaran is going to go into B tier. He's a little bit of a cheaper option. He got 6 points last game off the bench. He's a good one. They might start him this week, so I'll be watching lineups. If he does start, he'll probably be a good one to pick. Now, while Adinaran is at home, Segal is going to Adinaran's stadium in St. Louis. Segal here is going to go in A tier because he got 6 points last week and he's a very good value pick. Aliu is a very cheap option that is definitely going to rise in price. He's playing at home this week, so he is going in S tier. Suarez is a little too expensive for his price and is likely to keep going down. He only averages 4 points a game, and so I just think he's way too expensive for his average. I think there are definitely better picks in his price range. Bernardeschi and Insigne are both going to go in C tier. They both got 4 points away at Cincinnati, and they've got another hard away game at New England this week. So I think there are definitely better picks than them. Pookie is pretty expensive for his 4-point performance last week away, but he's home this week. But I think his performance is going to depend on Reynoso's health most of the time. So who knows how that's going to go. Farrington and Oluwaseyi, or however you say his name, are both going to go in B tier this week. They're both very cheap options. They both scored 4 points at their game last week, and they are both at home this week. So they're very good value picks. Kuipers and Polito are both going to go into C tier. Kuipers got 2 points last week. Polito only got 1. They're both likely to go down in value, especially if they don't have a good week this week. So hopefully they have a better week this week, but I just don't think they're very good picks. And the last two, Campana and Pellegrino. They're both fairly expensive players who both are averaging 1 point. So I'm going to put them in C tier. I think they're too expensive for their price, but they both have very high upside if they start. So there's always that. And that is my tier list for week 2 of MLS Fantasy. You will have to let me know if I've missed anything. This is by no means a comprehensive list. I've probably missed people, and let me know if there are any injuries or suspensions that I've missed of people that are on here. Let me know if you think that I've missed people, if I misplaced people. Just let me know down in the comments. Make sure to like if you liked this video, and subscribe if you want to follow for more. Feel free to join my group on MLS Fantasy. It's called MLS Fantasy Analyst Friends. I hope that I beat you all, and I hope that you have a great week and happy picking. Thanks for watching.